awesome. Hey guys, great to be back here at ETHDenver. So before I start talking about what Blocx is doing for payments and how we're really bringing blockchain to the masses, I'd like to give you a small history lesson on evolution of money. So Big Bang happened about 14 billion years ago, and life on Earth happened about 4 billion years ago, and money appeared about 7,000 years ago. But before we had money, we bartered, right? So if you had an orange or you had an apple, you could exchange one for the other. So very quickly that scheme stopped working because some of the resources becoming scarce and a lot of other resources are becoming more available. So that concept didn't work for a long time. So that came to a commodity of money. And at first we had spices. Because spices were scarce, they were expensive. I recently actually came to my bakery and I wanted to order a cake for my daughter that I usually order, which was white chocolate vanilla cake. And then the baker tells me, oh, we can't make it anymore. Why not? We're out of vanilla, so buy some. And she said it's very expensive. And that kind of reminded me of the first commodity of money, being a spice. So then the gold entered the society. So at first, people were basically carrying bricks, right? And it was not very useful to be carrying bricks around. So the temples came to the rescue. They said, okay, so come over, store the golden bricks in the temple, and then we will give you a receipt, like an IOU. So the priest was the first banker, and the temple was the first bank. And then the receipt for IOU was your letter of credit. And of course, later on, it was not very useful, again, to carry bricks around. The coins were established. Because in the temples, everybody was afraid of God, the people wouldn't steal it. So that worked for a little bit. But then banks came in, right? So the first banks that appeared, basically they were said, okay, so come bring the gold. We will give you a receipt, and that receipt basically represents money, right? So people brought it in, and then the banks started having reserves. When they started having reserves, they decided to do loans. So, for example, our presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, she thought it was a great achievement when they were able to sell debt to the middle-class families. So the banks essentially said, okay, so we have gold, but we really need to create some kind of currency. So the next stage was fiat currency was introduced. So the bank said, okay, forget about the gold. Why don't we just print money, give you the money, and that's basically your money. So that's when the money really stopped being backed by gold. That's really the pivotal point. And then what banks did, they said, well, carrying money around, you lose them, it gets stolen, you can't replace it. Why don't you come and bring it to the bank, leave it at the bank, and then again, we will give you, a receipt, an IOU, letter of credit, whatever that is. So they kind of copied what temples did before. And after that, we have electronic currency, right? So right now, when you go into your iPhone, you log into your online banking, what do you see? You see digital money. Right? You don't really see money, you see digital money. What that is, it's code. So your currency type right now in your online banking of Bank of America is what? USD. So this was a very interesting moment. I gave this talk partially last year at the Apprentice workshop right here. And at the same time, we were trying to solve this problem for payments. We were trying to think, well, how do we actually bring the payments on the blockchain, but at the same time, we don't really give them the crypto. We don't really give them the blockchain money. So people don't really feel that they're touching something else. So that was the pivotal moment for us to really understand how do we really do this. So let me introduce Blocx. So we are a payments platform on the blockchain. And we are going through a certification right now with a major cards network for still being under NDA and going through some of the contracts. I can't really disclose who that is, but I can at least talk about it. So the problem that we're trying to solve is the following. If you're familiar with payment space, then you know in a transaction, there are two sides. You have an issuing side, and then you have an acquiring side. On both of the sides, there are banks. So if you look in your wallet right now, you have a Bank of America card, a Chase card. So that's an issuing bank. And then you also need an acquiring bank, which is when you slide your card at Starbucks, for example, they need to get those $5 for your latte. So that happens when an issuing bank sends money to the acquiring banks. And that fee is called interchange. And those fees are very, very high. So there are a lot of problems with the system right now. It's on legacy technology. There are a lot of players. There are a lot of transactions that are really not necessary, and everybody takes a piece of the pie. And at the end, the merchants are the ones that are paying the price for this. So this is really where we are today. Now, if you're familiar with the company Stripe, so they did something great. In 2009, when they appeared, it was even more complicated than it is right now. If you wanted to launch a card, it was very, very complex. You had to work with companies like First Data, which are very cumbersome and complicated. You had to sign up separately with issuing bank, with acquiring bank. So it was a very difficult task. So what Stripe did, they actually brought all that together on a latest, greatest technology stack and made sure that all the branded cards that are launching, they don't have any issues. It's a quick onboarding for them, and they're kind of tying it all together. So they're like so they actually brought in the concept of a processor. It's called PSP. So Payment System Processor, PSP. So Stripe was really the first one, and then others appeared. Marqeta, Square, and the rest of them. So now, what are we trying to do? So we are trying to help the merchants to get the money fast, and we want them to have it as cheaply as possible. So they don't have to pay the interchange fee, the clearing fee, the transaction fees. So we're trying to lower the cost for them. So in order to do that, we're using a stable token. So the stable token is really what the merchant gets. So when the user swipes the card, the money gets locked in the issuing account, and we mint the token for the merchant. So the merchant gets the token. And because we are partnering with a major cards network, MC an abbreviation here, the merchants are able to transact with each other. So once they get the stable token, and if the other merchants are on the network, that money is good as USD. So that's really the concept that we brought to them, and that's what kind of, I guess, the business process that we're trying to change along with technology. So what are the benefits? So number one, it will be the first PSP on the blockchain right now in the world. It is 100% faster than the current settlement time. It is cheaper, and because acquiring costs are gone, interchange costs are gone. Fraud prevention, fraud goes down significantly, especially if the cards are digital and used with the biometrics of your phone. We can provide KYC and AML. We have all the licenses for that. Immediate settlements with the merchants, integration with your product, and there is no clearing. So why are we doing this? So we believe that we can bring this seamless to the user, and we can cut the costs, and we can provide the incentives for the merchants. We would like to have them use the money right away on the network. We want to help the digital wallets, crypto wallets, exchanges to launch branded cards, which would be much cheaper if you are compared to the incumbents right now. And then, again, we are targeting an unbanked industry, such as cannabis, for example. Okay, any questions? I think I'm out of time.